The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. This hidden truth has been whispered through the ages, yet somehow lost in the noise of a world that demands steel when your soul craves softness. My dear friends, I look into your eyes today and see that silent battle, the one between who you were told to be and who your spirit knows you truly are. The universe has brought you here to this moment, not by accident, but by divine appointment. There exists a reflection so powerful, so transformative, that it may forever change how you walk through this world. A redefinition of strength that doesn't crush your spirit, but rather sets it free. Today, I will share with you the 10 sacred truths about strength that the world has hidden from you. Revelations that may finally release you from the prison of false expectations and reconnect you with the authentic power that has always lived within you. 1. Strength is not endurance. It's surrender. From your earliest days, my friends, this world has taught you that to be strong means to resist, to push back, to stand firm against all forces. The universe watched as you learned to clench your fists, set your jaw, and carry burdens that were never yours to bear. You believed that strength meant never giving up, never letting go, and certainly never admitting defeat. But what if I told you that the greatest act of strength is not in holding on, but in letting go? What if your power has always been in your surrender? The most profound spiritual teachers throughout history understood this paradox. Even Jesus, in his moment of greatest trial, demonstrated this truth with the words, "Father, into your hands. I commit my spirit." This wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate display of strength. There's a critical misunderstanding here that has caused you so much unnecessary suffering. When you refuse to surrender, when you grip too tightly to what must be released, you don't demonstrate strength, you reveal fear. True strength knows when the battle is not yours to fight. True strength recognizes when it's time to open your hands and trust. I once knew a woman named Margaret, who had spent 40 years of her life caring for a husband with a debilitating illness. Day after day, year after year, she carried that weight alone, determined to prove her strength through endurance. "I never complained," she would tell me, "not once in 40 years. But it wasn't until her husband passed that she finally surrendered to her grief, to her exhaustion, to her need for help. And in that surrender, in those tears she finally allowed herself to shed, she discovered a strength far greater than the one that had merely endured. I thought strength was never breaking," she confessed. "But my real strength came when I finally allowed myself to break open." My dear friends, today I invite you to consider, what are you gripping so tightly that your knuckles have turned white? What burden are you carrying that was never meant to be yours alone? The universe is not asking you to bear everything. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply open your hands and say, "I surrender this. I trust in something greater than my own control." 2. Being strong doesn't mean you don't cry. How many times have you swallowed your tears, pushed down your pain, silenced your grief because someone told you that strong people don't cry? The universe has witnessed every tear you've hidden, every emotion you've buried in the name of false strength. My friends, there exists a profound misunderstanding in our world, that vulnerability equals weakness, that emotion signals fragility. But I ask you, what requires more courage? To deny your feelings and wear a mask of stoic indifference, or to stand in your truth with tears streaming down your face and still continue forward? Tears are not the absence of strength. They are evidence of your humanity, your depth, your capacity to feel deeply. The universe didn't create you to be numb. You were made to experience the full spectrum of human emotion, joy and sorrow, peace and pain. Even King David, a warrior and leader of immense courage, wrote, "My tears have been my food day and night." His strength wasn't diminished by his weeping. It was authenticated by it. When you deny yourself the release of tears, you don't preserve your strength. You fracture it. Those unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They accumulate within you, creating internal pressure that eventually demands release, often in ways far more destructive than tears would have been. There's a profound difference between breaking down and breaking open. Breaking down suggests collapse, a failure of strength. But breaking open, that's an expansion, a deepening, a transformation that allows more light to enter. Your tears can be the very waters that soften the hardened ground of your heart, making room for new growth. My dear friends, I invite you today to reconsider those tears you've been holding back. Perhaps they're not signs of weakness at all, but the most honest expression of a strength that's not afraid to feel, to be vulnerable, to be thoroughly, authentically human, in a world that often rewards pretense. 3. Letting go can be braver than holding on. The universe has watched you, my dear friends, as you've clenched your fists around relationships that drain you, situations that harm you, beliefs that limit you, all because you were taught that persistence is strength, that giving up is failure. You've carried weights not meant for your shoulders, believing that your worth is measured by how much you can bear before breaking. But what requires more courage? To cling to the familiar pain, the comfortable suffering, or to open your hands and step into the unknown, trusting that something better awaits? There is profound wisdom in the art of release. Consider the words found in Ecclesiastes. There is a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend. Discerning these seasons requires not weakness, but profound spiritual strength. When you hold on to something that no longer serves, your growth, whether a relationship, a job, a grudge, or an outdated dream, you're not displaying perseverance. You're revealing fear. Fear of change, fear of emptiness, fear of who you might be without that thing you've so desperately clutched. True strength is found in trusting the process of release, in having faith that the universe operates in cycles of emptying and filling, that empty hands are not failed hands. They are hands prepared to receive what's next. I've seen people cling to toxic relationships for decades, believing that endurance was their testament of strength. I've watched others remain in soul-crushing jobs, wearing their misery as a badge of honor. But the greatest courage I've ever witnessed has been in those moments when someone finally says, "Enough. This no longer serves me. I choose to let go." My dear friends, what are you holding on to right now that your soul is begging you to release? What would become possible in your life if you found the strength to open your hands and let go? Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is not to persist, but to release with faith that something better awaits in the space you've created. Brothers and sisters, may the peace of God be with you. If you're enjoying this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your opinion is sacred to me, as it helps me continue this mission of spreading light, faith, and hope. 4. You're not stronger for carrying alone. You're stronger when you ask for help. My dear friends, the universe has witnessed your silent struggles, the weight you carry behind closed doors. This world has convinced you that independence is strength, that needing others is weakness. It has glorified the lone wolf, the self-made success, the person who never needed anybody's help. But this is perhaps the most dangerous misconception about strength that exists in our culture today. Human beings were created for connection. We were designed to live in community, to support one another, to share our burdens. Yet somehow, we've twisted this fundamental truth into its opposite, convincing ourselves that true strength means isolation. Consider the wisdom found in Ecclesiastes. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. This isn't a description of weakness. It's a blueprint for true strength through connection. When you refuse to ask for help, when you insist on carrying every burden alone, you're not demonstrating strength. You're revealing pride. Or perhaps deeper still, fear. Fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, fear of owing someone else. But authentic strength has the humility to say, I cannot do this alone, and the wisdom to reach out. There's a critical difference between dependence and interdependence. Dependence means relying entirely on others, abdicating your own power. Interdependence means recognizing that we are all connected, that giving and receiving help is the natural flow of human relationship. Marilyn, a grandmother of 4 who lived next door to me for years, spent her entire life being the helper, the supporter, the one who carried others. When her husband fell ill with cancer, she insisted on caring for him entirely alone. I don't need help, she'd say firmly when anyone offered. Yet the toll it took was visible. Her health declined, her spirit dimmed. It was only when she finally collapsed from exhaustion that she was forced to accept assistance. I thought asking for help made me weak, she told me later, with tears in her eyes. But it was the hardest thing, and the strongest thing I've ever done. My friends, your strength is not measured by how much you can carry alone. Your strength is revealed in your capacity to be honest about your needs, to reach out your hand when necessary, and to allow others the sacred privilege of supporting you. In doing so, you don't just receive help, you give others the gift of being needed, of contributing to your well-being. And that is the beautiful cycle of interdependence that the universe intended. 5. Real strength has wrinkles, scars, and silence. My dear friends, this noisy world has convinced you that strength must announce itself, that it must be loud, visible, and impressive to others. But the universe knows a deeper truth. Authentic power often speaks in whispers, communicates through presence, and reveals itself in the quiet dignity of a life fully lived. The strength that truly transforms the world isn't found in grand gestures or forceful declarations. It's found in the eyes of a woman who has weathered countless storms, yet still meets each day with gentleness. It's found in the weathered hands that continue to reach out in love despite having been wounded. It's found in the quiet persistence that doesn't need validation or applause. This is the strength that doesn't shout, "Look at me," but instead whispers, "I am here," steady, unwavering, dependable. It's the strength of presence that sustains families through generations. It's the strength that knows when words are needed and when silence is the greater gift. Consider the powerful words of Isaiah, "In quietness and trust shall be your strength." This ancient wisdom reveals what our noisy culture has forgotten, that true power often works in silence, without fanfare or recognition. The wrinkles that line your face are not signs of weakness or defeat. They are sacred maps of the journey you've traveled, evidence of smiles shared, tears shed, and sunrises witnessed. The scars you carry, both visible and invisible, are not blemishes to be hidden. They are testaments to your resilience, proof that you have faced pain and continued forward. And that silence, that capacity to sit in quiet confidence without needing to prove yourself or justify your existence, that is perhaps the most profound strength of all. In a world addicted to noise, the person who has found their center and can remain there in peaceful silence possesses a power that no external force can diminish. My dear friends, the universe doesn't ask you to be louder than others to prove your strength. It invites you to discover the quiet power that has always resided within you, the strength that doesn't need to dominate, but instead chooses to nurture, to sustain, to endure. This is the strength that changes the world, not through force, but through faithful presence. 6. Jesus didn't prove his strength by fighting, but by loving. In a world that often equates power with dominance, force, and conquest, we've lost sight of the most revolutionary demonstration of strength ever witnessed. My dear friends, the universe invites us to reconsider what true power looks like through the example of Jesus, who, though possessing all authority, chose the path of love, service, and self-sacrifice. Consider this profound truth. The one who could have called down legions of angels to fight on his behalf, instead knelt to wash the dirty feet of his followers. The one who could have overwhelmed his opponents with superior force chose instead to turn the other cheek. The one who could have saved himself from the cross chose to remain there out of love for others. This is not the absence of strength, but its highest expression. As we read in Philippians, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. There exists a critical misunderstanding in our culture that equates meekness with weakness, gentleness with powerlessness. But true strength is not found in the capacity to destroy, but in the courage to nurture. Not in the ability to dominate, but in the willingness to serve. Not in the power to take life, but in the sacrifice to give it. When Jesus forgave those who crucified him, he wasn't displaying weakness. He was demonstrating a strength so profound that it transcends our normal categories of power. It takes far greater strength to absorb a wrong than to retaliate against it, to forgive than to seek revenge, to respond to hatred with love. My dear friends, the universe is not calling you to prove your strength through aggression or dominance. It's inviting you to discover the transformative power that comes when you choose the harder path of love. Love that persists when it's not reciprocated. Love that gives when nothing is returned. Love that stays when it would be easier to leave. This kind of strength doesn't make headlines or command immediate respect. It often goes unnoticed and unappreciated. But it's this quiet, persistent love that has the power to transform hearts, heal wounds, and ultimately change the world. Not through force, but through faithful presence and sacrificial love. 7. You don't have to be unshakable, just willing to get back up. My dear friends, somewhere along your journey, the universe watched as you internalized a dangerous lie. That strength means never falling, never failing, never showing weakness. You've believed that the truly strong never stumble, never doubt, never question. And so each time you've fallen, each time you've failed, each time you've felt overwhelmed by life's challenges, you've added it to the mounting evidence that you are somehow not strong enough. But what if true strength is not found in avoiding falls, but in how you respond to them? What if your resilience in rising again is the most authentic demonstration of your power? Consider the wisdom found in Proverbs. For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. Notice that this passage doesn't praise those who never fall. It honors those who continue to rise after falling. The number 7 here represents completion or perfection, suggesting that falling is not just possible for the righteous, but perhaps even inevitable. The distinction lies not in who falls and who doesn't, but in who chooses to rise again. There's a profound difference between being unbreakable and being resilient. Unbreakable suggests a rigidity that often becomes brittle when tested beyond its limits. But resilience acknowledges the reality of breaks, wounds, and failures, and then chooses to heal, to learn, to begin again. I've known people who appeared unshakable, who never seemed to struggle or doubt, but often, upon closer inspection, that appearance of unwavering strength was actually a carefully constructed facade, maintained at great personal cost. True strength is found not in pretending to be perfect, but in being authentically present, with your whole self, including your struggles and vulnerabilities. Anna, a woman in her 70s who had survived war, displacement, poverty, and personal tragedy, once told me, "People call me strong because I survived all these things, but I don't think strength is about what I endured. It's about the 1,000 times I wanted to give up but chose instead to take one more step." Her hands were gnarled with arthritis, her body bearing the marks of her difficult journey, but her eyes shone with a resilience that no hardship had been able to extinguish. My friends, the universe doesn't expect you to be unshakable. Life will knock you down. You will make mistakes. You will face obstacles that seem insurmountable. The question is not whether you will fall. The question is whether you will rise again. And each time you choose to get back up, no matter how shakily, no matter how slowly, you demonstrate a strength far more authentic and transformative than never falling at all. 8. It's okay to be tired. Even warriors sit down. Dear friends, the universe has witnessed your exhaustion. Those moments when your spirit feels depleted, your body aches with fatigue, and your mind struggles to find clarity. In those moments, you've pushed yourself harder, believing that true strength means never resting, never pausing, never acknowledging your limits. But what if that ceaseless pushing isn't strength at all, but a profound misunderstanding of your own humanity? Even the greatest warriors throughout history understood the necessity of rest. They knew that a sword constantly in use becomes dull, that a bow always strung loses its tension, that a warrior who never rests eventually falls. This wisdom is reflected in the Psalms. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. There is a critical distinction between laziness and necessary rest. Laziness is the avoidance of responsibility and neglect of purpose. But rest is the wise stewardship of your finite energy, the sacred practice of renewal that allows you to return to your calling with greater strength and clarity. When you deny yourself needed rest, when you push beyond your limits without replenishment, you're not displaying admirable dedication, you're practicing slow self-destruction. True strength acknowledges limitations. It recognizes that human beings were not created to function like machines, in constant production without pause. I remember meeting Carlos, a pastor who had served his community faithfully for over 30 years. He prided himself on being available at all hours, never taking a vacation, working through illness and personal tragedy. The Lord's work never stops, he would say, so neither can I. But then came his collapse, physical, emotional, spiritual. In the hospital bed where he found himself, he confessed through tears. I thought tiredness was a sign of weakness. I thought needing rest meant I didn't have enough faith. The universe isn't honored by your exhaustion. Your worth isn't measured by how much you can produce without pause. The divine design for your life includes rhythms of work and rest, engagement and withdrawal, giving and receiving. To honor these rhythms isn't weakness, it's wisdom. My dear friends, I invite you today to consider your relationship with rest. Have you been wearing your exhaustion as a badge of honor? Have you been interpreting your body's signals for rest as weakness to be overcome rather than wisdom to be heeded? Remember, even Jesus, in the midst of his world-changing ministry, regularly withdrew to quiet places to rest and pray. If the divine incarnate needed rest, how much more do you? 9. Strength doesn't mean having all the answers. It means trusting even without them. My dear friends, this world has convinced you that uncertainty is a weakness, that doubt is a failure of faith, that not knowing is a deficiency to be overcome. The universe has watched as you've pretended certainty when your heart was full of questions, as you've offered easy answers to complex situations, as you've hidden your doubts for fear of appearing weak. But what if the greatest strength isn't found in certainty but in the courage to remain faithful even in the midst of questions? What if doubt isn't the opposite of faith but an inevitable part of any authentic spiritual journey? Consider these words from the Gospel of Mark, where a father desperate for his child's healing cries out, "I believe, help my unbelief." This wasn't a failure of faith. It was an honest acknowledgement of the tension we all experience between our desire to trust and our human limitations. And Jesus didn't reject this man for his honesty. He responded to his vulnerability with compassion and power. There's a profound difference between intellectual certainty and trust. Certainty demands complete understanding before commitment. Trust acknowledges the limits of our understanding, but chooses to move forward anyway, based on what we do know about the character of God and the evidence we've seen in our own lives. The strength to say, "I don't know, but I still trust," requires far greater courage than pretending certainty. It means walking forward when the path isn't fully illuminated. It means continuing to pray when heaven seems silent. It means choosing love when you don't have all the theological questions answered. I recall Sarah, a woman whose teenage son had abandoned his faith and his family, disappearing into a life of addiction. When asked how she could continue to pray without visible results, she replied with tears in her eyes, "I don't understand why God hasn't brought him home yet. I don't know if my prayers are making any difference. But I keep praying because I know the character of the God I'm praying to, even when I don't understand his methods. That's not blind faith. That's trust tested by fire." My dear friends, the universe doesn't expect you to have all the answers. The divine doesn't require perfect understanding as a prerequisite for relationship. What's asked of you is not certainty, but trust. The willingness to take the next step, even when the entire journey isn't mapped out before you. To keep loving, even when you don't understand. To continue in faith, even when doubt mingles with your prayers. This is the strength that transforms. Not the strength of having all the answers, but the strength to live faithfully with the questions. I'm so happy to have you here with me. If this message is touching your heart and you're still here with me, type 2 in the comments. That way, I'll know you're walking this path of faith, seeking growth, reflection, and wisdom, as Pope Francis taught us. 10. Your softness is not a weakness, it's a gift. My dear friends, the universe has witnessed how the world has tried to harden you, demanding that you suppress your sensitivity, hide your emotions, toughen your heart. You've been told, repeatedly, that your gentleness makes you vulnerable, that your compassion makes you exploitable, that your depth of feeling is a liability rather than an asset. But what if everything you've been taught about this is fundamentally wrong? What if your softness, your sensitivity, your empathy, your intuition, your emotional depth isn't a weakness to be overcome, but your greatest gift to a wounded world? In a culture obsessed with dominance, your tenderness stands as a revolutionary act. In a society that valorizes the hard, the aggressive, the competitive, your gentleness offers an essential counterbalance. As we read in Matthew, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." This isn't a consolation prize for the weak. It's a promise that ultimately, it is gentleness that will transform our world. There's a critical distinction between being soft and being weak. Weakness implies an absence of strength, a deficiency of power. But softness is a presence, a quality, a deliberate choice about how to engage with the world. It takes tremendous strength to remain gentle in a harsh environment, to choose compassion when surrounded by indifference, to maintain an open heart in a world full of reasons to close it. Consider what requires more courage: to numb yourself to the pain of others, to armor your heart against vulnerability, or to remain sensitive, empathetic, and emotionally available despite knowing the cost. The person who feels deeply may experience more pain, but they also experience more joy, more connection, more authentic aliveness. Your sensitivity allows you to notice what others miss. Your empathy enables you to connect where others remain isolated. Your emotional intelligence gives you access to depths of wisdom that the merely intellectually intelligent often cannot reach. These are not weaknesses, they are superpowers in a world desperate for healing. I'm reminded of William, a man who spent 40 years as a hospice nurse. In a medical system that often taught emotional detachment as professionalism, he chose, instead, to bring his whole heart to each patient. "People told me I'd burn out if I cared too much," he once told me. "But I found the opposite was true. It wasn't the caring that depleted me. It was the pretending not to care." His softness wasn't his limitation. It was his greatest strength, the quality that made him extraordinary at accompanying people through their final journey. My dear friends, I invite you today to reclaim your softness as the gift it truly is. Stop apologizing for your sensitivity. Stop hiding your tears. Stop trying to toughen parts of yourself that were designed to be tender. The universe doesn't need more hardened hearts. It needs your courage to remain soft in a world that told you to be steel. Have you ever felt that your sensitivity or emotional depth was treated as a weakness rather than the strength it truly is? Share your experience in the comments below. My dear friends, as we come to the close of our time together, I want to gather the precious seeds we've planted today, so that they may continue to grow in the fertile soil of your heart and spirit. The universe has witnessed your journey. The times you've tried to be steel when your nature called for softness, the moments you've carried alone what was meant to be shared, the tears you've hidden believing they signaled weakness rather than humanity. Today, we've redefined strength not as the capacity to endure without bending, but as the courage to surrender what isn't yours to carry. We've recognized that true power isn't found in stoic silence, but in vulnerable authenticity, not in clinging, but in the brave act of release. We've acknowledged that asking for help isn't failure, but wisdom, that your wrinkles and scars are not blemishes, but beautiful testimony to a life fully lived. We've looked to the profound example of Jesus, who demonstrated that the highest form of strength is found not in domination, but in love, not in force, but in service. We've embraced the truth that resilience isn't about never falling, but about rising again, that rest isn't laziness, but necessary renewal, that faith doesn't require certainty, but trusts even amid questions. And perhaps most revolutionary of all, we've reclaimed your softness, your sensitivity, your empathy, your emotional depth, not as weakness to be overcome, but as your greatest gift to a world in desperate need of healing. My friends, as you move forward from this moment, carry these truths, not just in your mind, but in your heart. Let them reshape how you measure your own strength and how you recognize it in others. Remember that you are not called to be invulnerable, but authentic, not exhausted, but purposeful, not isolated, but connected. By embracing this truer definition of strength, you will not only find greater freedom and joy in your own life, but become a healing presence to everyone around you. Your softness, your vulnerability, your humanity, these are not liabilities, but the very qualities that make you an instrument of divine peace in a world that has forgotten the power of gentleness. Remember, you were never meant to be steel. You were created to be gloriously, powerfully, transformatively human, with all the softness, sensitivity, and strength that true humanity entails. And that, my dear friends, is not your weakness, but your superpower. May you go forth and embrace the incredible strength of your softness. May you have the courage to be gentle in a harsh world, to remain open-hearted when others close, to lead with love when fear would be easier. Share this message with someone whose heart needs this permission to be authentically strong rather than artificially tough. Together, we can create a world healed not by force, but by love. May God bless you. Type Amen in the comments, so I know you stayed with me until the end. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new heart-touching message. I'll see you in the next video.